the British colonial administration. They wanted to know whom they are ruling in order to rule more effectively, and also to sort of implement this principle of divide and rule and use local status to rule. So they started to cartograph, to explore the population all over India, all over British South Asia, not only Pakistan, but that's called the census literature. You might be aware they have for every district they edited a district gazetteer. You mentioned Christians before, no? The idea of a Christian in Pakistan is sort of nearly equivalent to a low status, to a Dalit identity, because those were another effort, as many people who are nowadays Christians, not all, but many, they belong to the disprivileged groups of South Asia. Their conversion constituted also an effort to escape this privilege. It was carried along.
Whether you become a Muslim or a Christian, the status that you carry along, that remains the primary point in your identity, and you can't ignore that.
I see in Pakistani history is efforts of particular groups to lift their status, and others and the effort of others to dump others down. But I don't see an effort to. I mean, with very few examples, you might Zulfikar Ali Bhutto's version of Islamic socialism comes to mind. Yeah, but even Bhutto was by no means willing to give up his own elevated status as a Vadera, as a Jagidar. You might say this. At least that's how I see it. I can't help seeing it this way. This idea, this momentum of this effort of creating a pure version of Islam, that got in a way frozen.
Hello and welcome to another episode of timesglo podcast. Today I'm very pleased to welcome Dr. Lukas Werth, who is a PhD in anthropology, and he is an associate professor at Mushtaq Ahmed Gurmani School of Humanities and Social Sciences, LUMS. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Lukas. How are you doing?
Thank you, Faisal. I'm fine. Reasonably well, let me put it like that.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. I'm really pleased. Like I wanted to have someone from anthropology specifically, because I'm interested in this field as well, and I'm exploring a little bit into anthropology in Pakistani context, you may say. So before going into the discussion, the few points that we have, actually we were chit-chatting before this. So I would just like to know more about, this is for my audience, know more about Lukas Werth, and how did he come into Pakistan first? What was his impression being in Pakistan, and what's his experience teaching in Pakistan?
My experience, let me say, my South Asian experience started with India. I actually did my PhD, the research for my PhD in India, but then personal relations brought me to Pakistan, let me put it like that, a marriage. And we both teach at LUMS now. Well, I've been busying myself practically all my adult life with South Asia, and my relation with Pakistan runs to more than, I think it's nearly 35 years now. And I've been teaching at LUMS for quite a while now, around 1.5 decades. I don't know how to put it. I would like to like Pakistan. It's become sort of a home for me, second home. So I'm concerned with what's going on. I'm concerned with the people. I care for what's happening there, and obviously I like to teach and to interact with students, with young people, to tell them something that might be useful for their future lives, or where they may gain an understanding. As far as my own knowledge goes, as far as my own as circumstances allow. Yeah. So
what was your research that you did on Pakistan?
You might say I've been doing work on different issues. We started with caste. You might ask caste. I've done some work on caste. I've done some work on modernity. I've done work on quite some work on practical Sufism, Piri Muridi. These are to some extent related issues. The basic question is, where did Pakistan start? What were the elements it started out with, and where are we now? What sort of, still a good question to ask, what sort of entity, what sort of society is Pakistan actually? To give examples, the answer to that is not as obvious as it might seem to many people. To take caste, biradri. Many people would argue that's this principle is on the retreat, taking the back step to in particular in urban areas, whatever, but in urban contexts. But it's also the idea, the principle of Jat, biradri, is very versatile, very amendable. Its traces are sometimes, so they hide in broad daylight, so to speak. They are obvious, but we don't take regard of them precisely because they are so obvious and inform our lives. Just to put some flesh to this, Pakistan grew out, obviously, from a colonial conditions. Now, the British Raj established the idea of or the big difference between landholders and zamindar and service castes, kammi bradaries. Now that has become a big status distinction, an ideal in so many ways. You might be aware that the term, if I call someone kamina, the term comes from kammi. By the same token, think about how wishful it is for everyone to have some zameen. Look how important this issue is in modern Lahore, for instance. Speculation with land has become the main way to gain property, where everybody aspires to have his own house, its own zameen. Situation in Karachi, for instance, just compared with Karachi, is not quite there. But this is, in Karachi, apartments are more common. That's one example. Others would be the way marriages are conducted, the way people deal between the relations between different classes. All these are and I mean, if I'm allowed to say, the staggering hierarchy that is found in Pakistani society, and we could talk about how that, for instance, influences any democratic process. The way, I forgot an issue which is very important, the way politicians are looked at. The dynastic way in which politics play out in Pakistan would not be possible, but would look different without the idea of caste supporting it. I don't know whether this this makes immediately sense. But think about that politicians very often they get a party ticket because they have some local revenue on the population of their home area. From where do they get this crisp? They're part of the dominant biradari, the dominant family, and the respect they enjoy, and that can be followed, that can be seen when people talk about leading family at a particular place. You visit any place in the Punjab or in the Sindh, and the way people talk about somebody who is the Vadera there or the leading family,
Vadera, Sardar.
Yeah, they talk about.
They have the titles.
Nawab, exactly. And they look at them like princes, like another kind of person, another kind of humans, another elevated people.
Dr. Lukas, if I may add into that, if we see the Nawabs, the Biradari system that we have over here, and someone is heading that family, for example, if I am from a Gurmani family, so there used to be Mushtaq Ahmad Gurmani, that the name of your school, and the other Gurmanis that we have here, and they are the lead politicians. And these people are made by the British. Before the colonial times, this didn't used to happen. The Brahmins, if we see it in Hindu context, used to be the ones who used to be at the top of hierarchy, and in Pakistan, in Muslim context, if we see the Sayyids, they used to be at the top, the Sayyidism that we call in literature maybe. So there was a religious thing attached to the hierarchical structures, and someone at the top of the pyramid were the religious persons. But now, if we look at after the colonial time, there are someones who have been allotted lands, and they have been given this authority by the British. How do you see it?
Ideas of caste change over time. They don't remain just the same through the ages, and they are but with regard to these giving of land, these jagirs, that had been a practice already among the Mughals. They had done this. The British Raj obviously continued with this practice. The British colonial administration wanted to know, particularly in the latter half, this effort started in the latter half of the 19th century. They wanted to know whom they are ruling in order to rule more effectively, and also to sort of implement this principle of divide and rule, and use local status to rule. So they started to cartograph, to explore the population all over India, all over British South Asia, not only Pakistan, but and that's called the census literature. You might be aware they have for every district they edited a district gazetteer. Usually you've got 2 editions for most district, an earlier one, a later one, and there were and in addition to that came this caste and tribes literature. Herbert Risley started with this for Bengal, people of Bengal. In the Punjab, it was Ibbotson and Rose, castes and tribes of the Punjab. And for the Sindh was part of the Bombay presidency, so there it was Russell and Hiralal and people and they cartographed the area, and what then happened was they needed assistance In many parts of South Asia, there was they used Brahmins. Okay, what I was going to say. So in many parts of South Asia, the Brahmanic influence was enhanced, but in other places, in Punjab, it was they used and worked with local authorities together. There's an old volume also, families, people and families of note in the Punjab. I think it's something like that is the title. Yeah, they work together with those Nawabs we discussed, landholders. And in the Punjab they did more. They rescheduled the whole population. Yeah, they used the local people, the Nawab, the peers, whatever, and the Sikhs, but they really sort of rescheduled the whole population into agricultural castes and non-agricultural castes. They gave their own law, rural law with religious law with the traditional law, and the traditional law was reserved for the landholding classes, in order to transform the Punjab, in particular, entirely from some rural, quiet backwater, South Asian backwater, to the corn chamber, the British Raj, creating in its wake the largest canal system of the world. And for that, in order to do that, they used the old categories of
that were existing,
of caste, of religious communities, Sikhs that were existing, and welded them newly, gave them a new shine, a new idea, so to speak, made them also far more corporate, because according to where you categorized, you had different laws applied to you, different possibilities, different options. So the whole idea became far more corporate and bureaucratic at the same way. And but the basic idea of status was very much made use of by the British.
If I may say, that was exploited by the British.
Of course. Of course, they wanted. What they wanted was effectively rule the place. And they figured out a way of doing this by making cleverly use of local categories, forming them in the way they felt fit. Well, that's all well known.
And was that used by the British or by the rest of the colonial empires, like Dutch, Portuguese? Was it used by others as well in different parts of the world for governing their colonies?
You mean the principle of caste?
No, not the caste. Like this type of mechanism that they have used in India.
As far as I can see, to some extent, of course, yes, but for the British Raj, British India was the crown jewel of the British Empire. It was far and away the most precious, the most wealthy colony they had. Yeah, and in other places in Africa, politics were simply far more restrictive. British was the largest, so India was the largest colony, South Asia was the largest colony, was the most wealthy colony. It needed the most deliberation. This principle was brought to perfection as far as I can see here. With all the other shortcomings and other methods and that are known and that we maybe discuss. I might add what we forget. So Imran Ali, my former colleague at LAMS, my colleague, wrote about this. You mustn't forget, for instance, the role of the army nowadays in Pakistan, but had also much of, not all, but any origins lie.
So we will discuss it. Obviously, we will discuss it. I have that in mind.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, I have that in mind. Let's explore the caste, biradari, qawmiyat in once Pakistan was created. After that, what happened to it? Like, how was it in the 80s, 70s, 80s? Firstly, in the constitution, like in Indian constitution, the issue was raised. But in Pakistan, as we say, there was like Islam and Islam has an egalitarian concept. Everyone is equal before Islam. So that with that, the caste officially was brushed under the rug. Okay, but that existed. That, as we were talking it before, you were telling that how Biradari works in Pakistan now, even now. But how did it happen, and how the state sees it? What's your observation?
Yeah, obviously in India, the idea of caste entered the constitution. There are parties, caste-based parties. Well, there are some in Pakistan also, the Bhil party, for instance, which you mentioned. But they've got the concept of scheduled castes, with all the affirmative action that goes along with it. So whereas you're right, in Pakistan, the idea wasn't mentioned in politics. With regard to egalitarian, I don't know. Think about the special role of the Sayyid. Think about you've got in Punjabi villages,
the Rajputs,
Iraqis. Yeah, Rajput is a Hindu category, if you like, huh?
Yeah.
The sons of Rajas, and they
come second to the Sayyids.
In Hindu categories, they belong to the second Varna, to the Kshatriya Varna. You've got by a rough and ready scheme of orientation, you may divide caste systems in classical Hinduism into 4 Varnas: Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. And Rajput are preeminent Kshatriya, kings and warriors. And it's a good point, a good primer you made. Kshatriya, Rajput are found in the Punjab. Many people call themselves Raja, Rana, or Rajput. And many people trace themselves also to old royal dynasties. I've done work once upon a time among Janjua Rajput, for instance, and I talked with their bards. They keep the Sheshir Nasab, the genealogy, and they trace themselves back to the Moon dynasty of Rajputs in Rajasthan. In Rajasthan, you found 2 dynasties, a Sun and a Moon dynasty. They trace themselves to the Moon dynasty. Gakkar, dominant biradari around Rawalpindi and Islamabad. Yeah? People of note call themselves, they want to be called Kiani. Kiani is a Persian royal dynasty. So this idea of royalty enters from many ways into reality nowadays in Pakistan. Yeah? And many terms, and people sometimes make use of terms that are relatively free to use. Yeah? I mean, you cannot use the term Sayyid easily without really being able to show a claim to do this. But you can call yourself relatively easy Quraysh or Sheikh.
Sheikh, yeah.
And that
Sheikh,
also,
most of the people I was reading it somewhere. Ghulam Hussain is the actually writer of. He done a thesis. He has written so many articles that are available on ResearchGate, and he says that more in since particularly that the sheikhs, they are the recent converts from Dalits, and those who have been converted to Islam, their caste also changes to the sheikh. So we can see it.
That's not, there are diverse people who call themselves sheikh or Quraysh or something. Yeah, I've met vagrants in the salt range, I remember, and elsewhere, Khana Badosh, as they would be called, and they call themselves Quraysh. A term they may be claimed by others also, but these are all these ideas always they constitute instruments of people where they may try to take another status with more or less success, obviously. Sometimes it's more successful, sometimes less successful. All this is plays a big role in the idea of in social ideas of Pakistan.
And day-to-day interactions, they have this specific role while dealing with each other. Just like you were telling, doing marriages, in professions, in normal day-to-day interactions, and also this exists in the urban centers as well. Once you know that this person is from a different caste, different tribe, and the ones they are at the lower hierarchical point, then you try to assert something on their identity. Like you say, I am this, I am this. This happens in day-to-day interactions.
Yes, very much so. You mentioned Christians before, no? The idea of a Christian in Pakistan is sort of nearly equivalent to a low status, to a Dalit identity. Because those were another effort, as many people who are nowadays Christians, not all, but many, where they belong to the disprivileged groups of South Asia, and their conversion constituted also an effort to escape this disprivilege, this underprivileged state, of course, but it was carried along.
Yes, and I just want to ask this: whether you become a Muslim or a Christian, the status that you carry along, that remains the primary primary point in your identity, and you can't ignore that. Why is that so? Like Dr. Lukas, what do you think is that the identity, the caste that reasserts itself even if you try to change it?
Well, I don't know whether it was really tried to change, to be honest. I haven't seen, what I see in history, what I see in Pakistani history is efforts of particular groups to lift their status, and others and the effort of others to dump others down. But I don't see an effort to, I mean, with very few examples, you might, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto's version of Islamic socialism comes to mind, yeah. But even Bhutto was by no means willing to give up his own elevated status as a Vadera, as a Jagidar, and as this elevated Iranian status he had. So I can't really see. There's a thing. The religions of the book, the religions of the scriptures, look egalitarian in some way. Yeah. So that's often attributed to Islam also. But very frankly, I don't know of any historical example where there would be an egalitarian society in Islamic society. Neither really Christian societies in brackets or Jewish society. It's Christian. There is some mentioning in old scriptures, but cut that out. That's difficult to verify historically. What I'm trying to say is, in Islam, you are free. There is an idea of being equal in front of God. Yeah, well, that means when you go into the mosque, when you pray, then the Raja may pray side by side to the Julaya. Then this hierarchy is lifted. When you go for Hajj, everyone is equal. Obvious. But these are special situations. These are not normal situations. There is an anthropological term for them. They are liminal situations. That means liminal would demand its own explanation. But what I'm trying to say here is you are equal as a human being in front of the divine. But the way how this translates into the relation between different human beings is a completely different question. Just remember that zakat is one of the Muslim duties. Nowadays often left in the fog, by the way, in brackets, in daily practice. But it implies a social hierarchy. It does. Yeah? Zakat makes only sense if you are yourself wealthy and you give those who are in need. There is also, there is a lot to be said in Islam. You've got also the idea of the Arabic word for poor is fakir. So fakir has taken another meaning also. It means something like darwish, something out of the world. Somebody who is innocent in front of the divine, left this world. Now that's also part of the idea, but that all doesn't mean that social hierarchies would go away. They are only amended. They are only remolded, so to speak. So that's what happened in Pakistan. That's what is observable in Pakistani practice. And that continues to be seen. But
yeah? Sorry, not sir, Dr. Lukas. if we do the comparison between the Indian state and Pakistani state, so we have taken different trajectories if we see the caste politics as we were discussing it before. But what is exactly the difference between the attitude of two states to take this issue and deal with it?
India's policy, very roughly, in a nutshell, I'd characterize as addressing it, taking it up, and there are different strands in Indian. There's this Gandhian strands, this Ambedkar strands of transforming it, of being this affirmative action in. But in the last decades, the idea of caste has again been cemented and become more stranded. This all addressing also makes a lot for the survival of the idea of caste and the continued. It's like, if you don't like it, and assume it has its problems. I mean, the idea of caste is also not entirely. One shouldn't see it only negatively, in fact, of biradari also, because it's the one, in a place like Pakistan, a place like India, for many people, it's the one kind of social insurance people have, social background. Yeah, your own biradari might help you. That's where you have support. That's where you find a home. that's your own mohalla, your own people. That's the people of your. So I that's a caveat, but this whole hierarchical aspect, this whole up and upside down, pure, impure, whatever, that has been in recent decades under Modi's rule enhanced.
And
in
that
Pakistan,
idea have manifested itself in the current elections. If we see the results of these elections, the caste politics have played a huge role in in Modi not getting an easy, simple majority.
But I guess that's true. But they're still busy. That was a surprise result, and they're still busy to sorting out the result and analyzing it. Anyway, in Pakistan, it's ignored. In Pakistan, there's a blissful ignorance of the principle of caste and of this and all its implications. So to speak, if you don't like it, you might use the analogy. It's some slightly derisive metaphor. It grows like a fungus under the carpet. You don't see it, but it's sort of.
It's happening.
Does its work? Does its destructive work? In so many ways. That's the thing.